Okay, so you've got the hustle, you found that product market fit, your business is growing, maybe even, making pretty good money.
Right. Things are clicking.
But then suddenly, scaling, it feels less like just more growth and more like you're trying to climb this sheer cliff face, an impossible mountain.
We've all seen it happen.
Yeah, those really promising small companies that just hit a growth plateau, a ceiling maybe, and they just stop, they get stuck.
Mm.
So we've been deep diving into a really comprehensive source, the Entrepreneurial Guide to Business Scaling,
Yeah, it's quite detailed.
and it's dedicated to mapping out, well, the exact climb, right? How to get out of that operational holding pattern.
Exactly. And the focus isn't just on, working harder or putting in more
Right,
hours.
not just pure effort.
No, it's about specific, repeatable strategies,
Mm.
things you can actually do to turn that successful small business into a thriving, scalable enterprise.
And that's really our mission for this deep dive, isn't it?
It is. We're hunting for those high leverage decisions, the choices that fundamentally change the underlying structure of the company.
Because scaling success, it's not about more brute force.
No. As the guide makes really clear, it's about making sure every bit of effort you put in actually multiplies its impact across the whole organization. Structure, not just sweat.
Okay, let's unpack that right away then. If a business is growing, why does it slam into this wall? What specifically stops a thriving company dead in its tracks right when it needs to accelerate?
Well, the guide calls this initial barrier the startup ceiling. And it can be a pretty brutal reality check for founders.
The startup ceiling, okay.
It happens when those initial ways of doing things, the heroics of the early founder maybe,
Mm.
when those things actually start hindering growth instead of helping it.
Wow, so the very methods that got you off the ground, they become the problem. The things stopping you from hitting, say, the next big revenue milestone.
Precisely. And the signs, the symptoms, they're tangible. You can
I
feel
look
it.
why. What should people look out for?
Well, you've hit this scaling wall when, for instance, the founder becomes the bottleneck for every single decision over, like, $50.
Uh-huh. Everything flows through them.
Or maybe your systems, your tech, starts breaking every time marketing has a good month and runs a successful campaign.
Chaos.
Operational chaos, yeah.
Yeah.
Founder burnout is a big one. Or maybe you just can't onboard new customers without completely overwhelming your support team and impacting existing clients.
So the whole thing feels like it's held together with duct tape and sheer willpower.
Exactly. Willpower and tribal knowledge, things that live in people's heads. And that stuff just doesn't scale. You can't multiply that easily.
So what's the fix? What's the core change needed? The guide is very clear. The critical change required is moving past that reliance on, well, individual heroism, getting away from the founder as superhero model.
Yeah, there's a crucial mindset shift. The founder has to stop being the main person doing everything and start being the architect, the person designing a standardized system that can ideally run without them needing to be involved in every little detail.
That's a huge psychological leap, isn't it? Going from
Yeah.
being the engine of the train to laying down the tracks for other trains.
It really is. And building tracks, as you say, it's complex, it takes time, it costs money.
Okay, so once we accept that mindset shift, this is where it gets really mechanical, right? What are the non-negotiable pillars for building this new scalable infrastructure? The guide mentions 3. That's right. We absolutely have to solidify what it calls the foundational trifecta: people, processes, and technology. People, processes, tech. Okay?
Yeah.
But here's the key. These aren't just things you have. They have to be built to scale right from the start, or at
Right.
least redesigned with scale in mind. You can't just duct tape them together later.
Exactly. You can't bolt efficient processes onto, say, a disorganized team using a patchwork of old tech and then expect exponential results. It
Oh.
just collapses.
Let's break this down quickly, people.
So, people. It's not just hiring bodies. It's about structuring the organization correctly. Roles, responsibilities, reporting lines that make sense for growth.
Then processes.
Processes means codifying how essential work gets done, turning tribal knowledge into standard operating procedures, SOPs, so you stop reinventing the wheel every single week.
Stop solving the same problem over and over.
Right. And technology means integrated systems. We're talking about tools that can handle volume and, crucially, talk to each other. Things like a proper ERP, a CRM that connects to your ops, not just a bunch of spreadsheets.
Okay, standardizing processes sounds great on paper, But when you're in that hypergrowth phase, every day feels like a fire drill. The temptation is always just get the product out the door faster, right? Skip the documentation this time.
Oh, absolutely. That temptation is huge.
So how does the guide suggest forcing that discipline, making time for process building when everything feels urgent?
It flips the script. It stresses that creating those processes is the fire prevention system. It's not a nice to have when you have time, it's what creates the time later.
Ah, okay. Proactive, not reactive.
Exactly. And the trick is to define these processes not just randomly, but through the lens of leverage. Where will standardizing give us the biggest bang for our buck?
And how do you know where that leverage is?
Data. This is where data-driven decision-making becomes non-negotiable.
Right.
You have to use analytics to figure out which processes, if solidified, will actually move the needle the most.
So the data isn't just looking backward like reports.
No, it's for leverage and prediction.
Yeah.
For example, the guide really warns against scaling rapidly if you don't fundamentally understand your key financial health indicators.
Like what kind of indicator?
Well, the classic one is your customer lifetime value, CLV, versus your customer acquisition cost, ACSIC. If you don't have a solid ratio there, ideally like 3-to-1 or better.
You're losing money on growth.
You could be. Or you're just multiplying inefficiency, pouring money into acquiring customers you can't retain or monetize profitably. Data tells you exactly where to focus that process standardization effort first. Fix the leaky bucket before you turn the fire hose on.
That makes sense. That's really concrete. And I imagine using that data goes beyond just optimizing what you do now. It helps you find new opportunities too, like diversification.
Absolutely. And you're not just doing more of the same faster.
Yeah.
Solid data validation helps you identify untapped opportunities, maybe adjacent customer segments or new geographic markets.
Places where your newly scalable infrastructure can actually succeed with minimal tweaking.
Exactly. If your systems are now built to handle, say, 10,000 users without breaking a sweat, where else can you deploy that capability? That's growth with leverage, not just brute force expansion.
Okay, let's switch gears a bit. Infrastructure is critical, but it's only as good as the team running it, right? And the people aspect, especially now with the job market being so competitive, that often feels like the absolute hardest part of scaling. The guide calls it the talent tsunami.
It is a tsunami out there.
Yeah.
And just throwing money, a good salary, at the problem. It often isn't enough anymore, especially for top talent.
So what does it take?
Scaling demands what the guide calls the art of attracting and retaining top-tier talent. And that art involves selling them not just on the job, but on the mission. The complexity of the challenge you're tackling and the real scope for them to make an impact.
You need builders, not just maintainers.
Precisely. People who are genuinely motivated by building something significant, not just collecting a paycheck.
But finding them, attracting them, that's only step one, isn't it?
Oh, only half the battle.
Yeah.
Maybe less. You have to organize them effectively. You need to move away from that flat, maybe slightly chaotic startup structure where the founder approves everything.
Towards something more structured.
Yes. The guide puts huge emphasis on structuring effective teams, maybe cross-functional ones, and critically, implementing autonomous leadership.
Okay, let's pause on autonomous leadership. That sounds powerful, but maybe a bit risky. It means pushing decision-making power down, right?
It does, giving leaders real ownership over their domains.
But doesn't that kind of radical autonomy sometimes clash with the need for standardization we just talked about? How do you stop departments from just becoming, competing silos doing their own thing?
You've hit the exact tension point where many scale-ups stumble and fall. It's a real balancing act.
So how does the guide suggest solving it?
The key is defining the boundaries of that autonomy very, very clearly. Autonomous leadership means a leader has full decision-making power within their defined area, their swim lane, so to speak,
Okay.
as long as they operate within the fundamental, non-negotiable standards of the overall scalable infrastructure, the core processes, the key metrics, the quality controls we discussed.
So they decide how to hit the target, but the target and the essential tools are standardized across the board.
Exactly. They get freedom on the execution within defined guardrails. That prevents silos while still empowering speed and local decision-making.
Okay, that makes sense. So if the processes are like the skeleton and the autonomous leaders are the muscles, maybe the culture is the nervous system connecting it all.
That's a great analogy. Yeah.
Because when you're exploding in size, bringing in tons of new people, handing over the reins to these autonomous leaders, how on earth do you maintain the company's identity, its soul? How do you build a culture that actually sustains that rapid growth instead of fracturing under the pressure?
Yeah, the culture piece is huge. And it can't be an afterthought. The culture itself has to be scalable.
Scalable culture, what does that look like?
It means it needs to be consciously designed, codified, and actively taught. You can't just hope it emerges organically when you're doubling headcount every 6 months.
So writing down values?
Partly, yes. But it's more about distinguishing between your absolute core values, the non-negotiables, and maybe operational norms, which might need to flex a bit. The guide suggests defining, say, 3 to 5 core principles that genuinely guide every major decision.
Like radical candor or customer obsession or something.
Exactly. Things like that. And these principles have to be robust enough to work across different departments, maybe even different countries, acting as the sort of central gravity for all those autonomous teams.
A cultural North Star.
That's it. You have to actively cultivate a scalable company culture, one that helps, not hinders, that rapid expansion by giving everyone, especially the new folks, clear guideposts for how we operate and make decisions here.
Okay, this is all starting to sound expensive. Which brings us to the fuel for all this growth. Capital. Money. Scaling costs serious money for the people, the tech, the processes, and we often jump straight to the standard idea, okay, we need a massive angel round or time to court the VCs. That's the default assumption for many.
Does the guide offer any alternatives, or maybe a more nuanced view on that funding path?
It absolutely does. It really nudges entrepreneurs to look beyond just traditional VC or angel money, especially if things like maintaining control are important to them.
So what else is there? Well, scaling needs tailored capital, the right money for the right stage and structure. For instance, if your business has strong, predictable, recurring revenue.
Like a SaaS company, maybe?
Right. The guide suggests exploring potentially non-dilutive options, things like revenue-based financing or maybe venture debt or mezzanine debt. These are often structured specifically to match the cash flow patterns of a growing but predictable operation.
So you're not giving up as much equity early on.
Potentially, yes. The key is really matching the capital structure to your specific growth profile and your tolerance for dilution versus debt.
But if you do go the external equity route, say VC, how does the pitch change when you're in scaling mode versus startup mode?
Oh, it changes dramatically. It's not really about the cool idea or the initial traction anymore. Your pitch has to laser focus on demonstrating your scaling potential. Investors need to see hard, quantified proof that you have those robust people, processes, and technology systems we talked about already in place or well underway. They need convincing that you can actually absorb a large chunk of cash and efficiently turn it into massive, repeatable market share. It goes back to those metrics again, like the CLV.SEC ratio. Absolutely. You need to show the engine is built and efficient, and now you just need the fuel to make it go faster and bigger. The pitch becomes much more about operational de-risking and predictable execution.
Okay. It sounds like the pitch is basically saying, we've built the machine, now help us scale production. But raising the money is one thing. Managing it smartly during that hypergrowth, that seems like another huge challenge.
It is.
Isn't the temptation just immense to, burn through that cash-chasing vanity metrics, hiring too fast, spending too much on fancy offices? That temptation is definitely there. And you hit on probably the single biggest financial pitfall in scaling, the timing gap. The timing gap.
Yeah. When you scale rapidly, you often have to invest heavily in the infrastructure, the people, the tech, before you actually see the corresponding revenue come in.
So your expenses spike before your income catches up.
Exactly. And running out of cash during that growth spurt, it's surprisingly common, and it can be absolutely deadly. You were growing, but you grew yourself into bankruptcy.
So what's the financial discipline the guide recommends to avoid that?
Smart financial management during scaling really boils down to 3 critical components, according to the guide.
Okay.
First, incredibly careful oversight of cash flow. This means rigorous forecasting, high-fidelity financial models. No more back-of-the-napkin stuff.
Knowing exactly where your cash is going and when.
Precisely. Second, a relentless focus on maintaining unit profitability. Growth for growth's sake, especially if it's subsidized by burning endless piles of cash, is just a ticking time bomb. You need a path to sustainable profit.
And the third?
Strategic reinvestment strategies. Any profit you do generate shouldn't just sit there or get pulled out. It needs to be immediately and strategically channeled back into things that increase your leverage further.
Like automating more manual work. Perfect example. Or improving that core technology stack. Or investing in developing that next layer of autonomous leadership. The rule is, if it doesn't increase leverage or strengthen the scalable foundation, don't fund it right now. Got it. Be ruthless about reinvesting in scalability itself.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've theoretically built it, we've funded it, we've staffed it up. Now, the final phase, How do you sustain this?
Hmm. Keeping it going.
This seems like the point where founder burnout really kicks into high gear. How do you prevent the founder, who maybe just got free from the day-to-day, from getting sucked right back into the operational whirlwind?
Yeah, that's a constant danger. The founder's time is by far the most valuable single resource in the scaling company, and it has to be fiercely protected for strategic work.
So more delegation, radical delegation, and automation wherever possible. The guide actually suggests founders do an exercise. Identify the, say, 20% of their tasks that genuinely generate 80% of the strategic value.
Yeah.
The Pareto principle for their own time.
Exactly. And then find ways to delegate, automate, or simply eliminate almost everything else immediately.
And the goal of freeing up that time.
The goal is to get the founder focused, maybe 90%, on true strategic initiatives. Things like exploring completely new markets, building crucial high-level partnerships, reinforcing the culture across the growing org.
Not getting dragged back into approving purchase orders or debugging code.
Absolutely not. That's what the autonomous leadership layer is for. The founder needs to operate on the business, not in the business, especially at scale.
Okay. And while the founder is doing all this high-level strategic thinking, what about the customer? It feels like it would be so easy during hyper-expansion, with all these new layers and processes, to lose that deep connection you had with customers back when you were small.
That disconnect is incredibly dangerous, potentially fatal to long-term scaling. You lose your market feedback loop.
So how do you prevent that?
The guide is emphatic about the critical need for maintaining customer centricity amidst rapid expansion. And this can't just be lip service or hoping it happens.
Need structure, too.
Yes, it requires formal, non-negotiable mechanisms. Things like dedicated voice of the customer, VOC programs that feed directly into strategy. Ensuring product development cycles are anchored in real customer feedback, not just internal ideas. Maybe even maintaining a certain level of executive contact with key clients, no matter how big you get.
Keeping that pulse on the market.
Yeah.
Constantly. And then there's one final piece for sustainability: accepting reality. Which reality is that?
The reality that scaling guarantees turbulence. The market will shift. New competitors will emerge. Technologies will change. You have to be prepared for and actively adapt to these inevitable market shifts and disruptions.
So agility isn't just a startup buzzword.
It's survival insurance during scaling. It requires things like having established scenario planning processes, maybe keeping some budget flexibility so you can pivot quickly when that unexpected disruption hits or a major opportunity appears. You can't be locked into a rigid 5-year plan.
Okay. Wow. That's quite a journey. So if we bring this all together for you, the listener, looking up at that scaling mountain, we've really mapped out a path, haven't we?
I think so.
It starts with that sometimes painful but totally necessary mindset shift for the founder.
Architect, not just hero.
Then moves into building that robust integrated infrastructure, the people, processes, tech working together.
The foundation.
Followed by securing the right kind of capital, smart capital, tailored to your specific situation.
Fueling the engine efficiently.
And then finally, settling into the sustainable rhythm of radical delegation for the founder, maintaining customer focus, and staying agile enough to adapt to whatever the market throws at you.
And the core insight, really, through all of that, it remains the same.
Sure.
The challenge of scaling isn't just about adding more capacity or making people work longer hours. That hits a limit fast.
It's not sustainable.
No. It requires fundamentally shifting the structure of how work gets done, moving away from relying on sheer individual effort as the main driver, and towards leveraging autonomous leadership, empowered by those verifiable, data-driven systems and processes. That's the only reliable way to genuinely break through that ceiling and keep climbing.
That's excellently put. Which leaves us with a final thought for you to chew on. If truly empowering autonomous leadership is the ultimate goal for scaling teams, how does a founder strike that perfect balance?
The balance between what?
Between that powerful localized delegation letting teams make decisions quickly and the absolute necessity of maintaining a single, unified, scalable company culture that holds everything together.
The autonomy versus cohesion tension again.
Exactly. Which force should really take precedence during those periods of radical, maybe even disruptive growth? Should you prioritize the localized power of autonomous teams to react fast, or the central gravity of that unified culture to make sure everyone is ultimately pulling in the same strategic direction?
That's a tough one.
Something for you to mull over as you map your own climb out from under that startup ceiling.